Afternoon Adventures. We're back today with the Warlock again. Did a video a little while back going over the Invocations available right away at level 2. And figure it's about time to come back at it with the Pact Invocations. Pact of the Chain, Pact of the Blade, Pact of the Tome, and the new Pact of the Talisman as well. There are not as many, so probably a little shorter video. We'll see. I like to talk. Let's get right into it. Now, each pact has 4 invocations that you can choose with that pact as a prerequisite, but not all of them are available right away at level 3, so we're going to focus on those chosen few. Let's jump right in with Pact of the Tome. Pact of the Tome is already a great pact to choose. You get a book with several cantrips in it. They can be any cantrips in the game, and they count as Warlock spells for you. It's all great. The Invocation Book of Ancient Secrets is a must-have, I think, for any Tome lock. Gives you access to any ritual in the game, not just from a particular class like the Ritual Caster feat gives, but any ritual you come across at all you can copy into this book. But if we're talking about a dip into Warlock of only 3 levels, that means we're only going to have access to the level 1 and 2 rituals, which means no water breathing or water walking or Rari's telepathic bond. So less good for this multi-class where we're only taking a few levels of Warlock. Still pretty decent. For example, we can grab Detect Magic and Comprehend Languages, 2 of my favorite rituals. Quite useful across the board. But like I said, we don't get those higher level ones. Also available for Tome locks is Aspect of the Moon. This gives you the ability to fill your long rests with light activity rather than sleeping, and also you can't be compelled to sleep by any means. This means that if you want to, you can spend your entire long rest standing watch. If you make some investments to crank up your passive perception, be just the best guards person that you can be, you can do that for the entire night and keep your party safe. And since you're a Pact of the Tome Warlock, you could even pick up the ritual spell Alarm to help cover an entrance that maybe you don't want to have to loop around to all the time, for example. Actually, since it's a ritual, you could set up alarms at multiple key locations and then stand guard over a general area. And then if someone tries to sneak in a side entrance or something, alarm. I really want to make a Warlock at some point, or a character with Warlock levels with Aspect of the Moon in order to make them a sort of Vigilant Watcher type. I picture this going really well with the Paladin flavor, perhaps Druid, like you're the guard of an ancient grove or something. Really like the flavor of being able to stand watch forever and not sleep. Overall, Aspect of the Moon, dripping with flavor, full of long rest goodness. Probably won't help very much in combat or in a social or exploration encounter, although immunity to anything that would put you to sleep could end up being useful, situationally. Your mileage will probably vary. So with those 2 down, let's continue on to Pact of the Chain. This is the one that gives you the cool familiar, gives you your imp, your pseudo-dragon, your sprite, or your quasit, or one of the original familiars. There's nothing saying you can't take an owl. And if you use that familiar for scouting, you're going to want Voice of the Chainmaster. Voice of the Chainmaster allows you to perceive through your familiar's senses over any range as long as you're on the same plane of existence, and also speak through your familiar in your own voice while doing so, even if that familiar isn't normally capable of speech. This is great, again, for scouting, especially if you have like an invisible imp or quasit. And it's also great for communicating over long distances. Maybe you can send your familiar to a nearby town to ask for aid, or call for an evacuation or something. I don't know. Voice of the Chainmaster is right there in the PHB. It's been there since the start of 5e. It's pretty much the go-to for chain locks, and it's a good one. So let's move on to the one from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones. Gift of the Ever-Living Ones makes it so if your familiar is within 100 feet of you, which is a pretty long range, any healing you receive is maximized. You don't roll dice, you just take the maximum value and apply that to your HPs. This is huge. If you're a Celestial Warlock, this applies to your bonus action healing d6s, as long as they're used on yourself. If you're a Moon Druid, you can use those d8s when you are wild-shaped to heal yourself. Those are maximized. If you are multiclassed with Divine Soul Sorcerer, or Bard, or Cleric, any healing spells you cast are maximized on yourself, specifically on you. Doesn't help your team that much, but if you're trying to be a frontliney tanky type, or if you're just squishy and want to be able to heal yourself better, Gift of the Ever-Living Ones will go a long way toward that end. It also applies to short rests when you roll hit dice to heal yourself. That's healing, and you're rolling dice, so they're maximized. There's a shiny little gem, a little trick that I pulled with one of my characters. If you're a dwarf and you take the Dwarven Fortitude feat from Xanathar's Guide to Everything, you can dodge in combat to heal with a hit die, and if you have Gift of the Ever-Living Ones, you can maximize that hit die. So, little extra bonus there. Very niche, but if you're a dwarf, that's a trick you can do. And last for Pact of the Chain, let's go to Tasha's Cauldron of Everything for the Investment of the Chainmaster feature. With Investment of the Chainmaster, your familiar gains a flying or swimming speed, your choice, of 40 feet. This is huge if you want to have something like an octopus, but you don't want it to be super duper slow on land. The invocation also allows you to use a bonus action to command your familiar to attack. Now, I want to clarify, you're commanding the familiar to attack, but that doesn't mean it does so right away. It does it on its turn using its action like you would normally use an attack action. So you use your bonus action, and then when the familiar's turn comes up, then it attacks. Which means this actually stacks with the Pact of the Chain's normal ability to give up one of your attacks when you take the attack action to have your familiar attack as a reaction. You can actually do both those things in one round. So you can, for example, start your turn, use the attack action, give up your attack, or one of your attacks, and have your familiar use its reaction to attack, and then use your bonus action to command the familiar to attack, and on the familiar's turn, have it attack again. How useful this will be is going to depend very strongly on what familiar you have. If you've got something like an imp, then at low levels it could be really strong, given that it deals extra poison damage, etc. But at higher levels, your own attacks and cantrips, and of course leveled spells, are going to outpace the damage that your familiar can do. So there's that. If your DM is willing to blur the lines a little and give you a familiar that's not on the label for Pact of the Chain, something like maybe a Gazer, or if you're playing an Adventurers League and you have a cert for a special familiar that goes above and beyond what the normal ones do, then this could suddenly get a lot better. That's of course between you and your DM, or you and your log sheets in Adventurers League. For example, I have a character who is planning to go Pact of the Chain Warlock because he picked up a Gazer familiar, and it sounds like a lot of fun to me to just have it shoot eye-rays all over the place. So that's what I'm doing. Investment of the Chainmaster also causes your familiar to, when it forces a creature to make a saving throw, use your Warlock spell save DC, which is astronomically more powerful. And this ranges from everything from the Sprite and Pseudo-Dragon's poison / possibly unconscious condition on their attack to something like the Gazer. Again, I'm excited for this Gazer with its eye beams, to the Quasit's fancy scare thing that they do. Using your Warlock spell save DC is going to be much, much higher than what's in their stat block normally. Even right away at level 3, your DC is generally around 13, assuming you've got about a 16 or 17 in Charisma. So that's already higher than what's in the stat block for most or all of these things, and it's only going to go up as you gain levels. And if you find a Rod of the Pact Keeper, even better. That can increase it further. And lastly, Investment of the Chainmaster allows you to use your reaction when your familiar takes damage to give the familiar resistance to that damage, which makes it take half damage, of course. Now, most familiars don't have a ton of HP, so this might not save them, but it's better to have the option and not need it than to not have it at all. Overall, Investment of the Chainmaster, very strong, very potent, brings the Pact of the Chain up into actual pet build territory, or at least close to it, rather than, oh, your familiar is slightly better than everyone else's. Which was fine. But with Investment of the Chainmaster, Pact of the Chain as a whole just leaps and bounds ahead of where it was. So this is a must. If you're going to go Pact of the Chain and you want one invocation for your Pact, for your familiar, and maybe one for something else, like Agonizing Blast, for example, or Double Sight or something, I would go with this one. Investment of the Chainmaster is huge. I've talked about familiars long enough, so let's move on to Pact of the Blade. Pact of the Blade is one that people cite as having invocation tax, in a way, because you're sort of compelled to take Thirsting Blade and Life Drinker at the appropriate levels, but the only one that you can take right away is Improved Pact Weapon, so that's the only one I'm going to really address in this video. Improved Pact Weapon allows you to, when you summon your Pact Weapon, which means you haven't bonded to a magic weapon, you're summoning one out of nothing. You can summon a bow or a crossbow, so that's really helpful if you're going for sort of an arcane caster archer flare. But aside from that, you can also use your Pact Weapon as a focus for your spellcasting, and that's true whether you're summoning one from thin air or you've bonded to a magic weapon, and also you gain a +1 to the attack damage rolls with the weapon, with your Pact Weapon I should say, as long as it's not a magic weapon that already has a bonus to those rolls. Now, that phrasing is important, because that means if you are bonded to a magic weapon that doesn't have a bonus to those rolls, something like a Flame Tongue or a Frostbrand, then you can make it a +1 Flame Tongue or a +1 Frostbrand, kind of. You get a bonus to rolls where other people don't, which I think is very cool. It opens up some possibilities with weapons like the Oath Bow, where it's powerful but only against one creature per day. Well, now it's a +1 Oath Bow, you get a +1 to attack and damage rolls all day, and then once a day you can also slap someone with the Oath and get advantage to attacks and +3d6 damage, just as an example. Overall, I think this is a great invocation if you've got one of those weapons, or if you don't have a magic weapon yet, of course, having a +1 weapon that you summon out of thin air is pretty great. But if you're bound to a weapon that has a bonus to those attack rolls, and if you're not worried about your spellcasting focus, this isn't going to do that much for you, so you can leave it behind no problem. So let's move on to the last pact, Pact of the Talisman. Now, Pact of the Talisman I already think is kind of weak. It's really just you gain a bonus to a failed ability check an amount of times per day equal to your proficiency bonus. Proficiency bonus does scale with character level at least. So with our 3-level dip in Warlock, we're still going to get a fair amount of uses of it as we level up. But it's just a d4 to a failed ability check. Like, you can just cast Guidance, you can use something like Dark One's Own Luck, or Favored by the Gods. There are multiple ways to get bonuses to ability checks, so having one that's limited to just a few times per long rest, I don't think is very good. Now, you can also give the talisman to a teammate and have them wear it, but then it's the same small benefit just for somebody else. If you've got a party rogue, you know, maybe toss it on them so that if they fail to pick a lock, they can add a d4. Really, I think it would be better to just go Tome lock and take Guidance. But that aside, the invocation that you can get with it is Rebuke of the Talisman, and it means that when you or whoever is wearing the talisman gets hit by an attacker that you can see within 30 feet of you, not within the 30 feet of the talisman, 30 feet of you, you can deal force damage to the attacker equal to your proficiency bonus and push them up to 10 feet away from the talisman wearer. Proficiency bonus force damage is minuscule. That's the problem I have with this. It's, right away at level 3, it's only 2 damage, and it's about half the health of a commoner NPC. Like, you're not going to kill anyone with that 2 damage, unless you've already got them down to very, very low health in the first place. The real usefulness of this invocation is to push someone 10 feet away from the attacked target, which can be fine if that creature has already used all of its movement, or all but 5 feet of its movement. Otherwise, pushing them 10 feet away from the creature they attacked isn't going to really do anything, as they're just going to move in again. They're just going to move forward 10 feet and attack again if they have multi-attack or something similar. Or if they have a ranged attack option, they may just do that instead. Now, you can use this invocation as much as you want, although it does cost you a reaction. So at least it doesn't have the same limitation as the baseline Talisman power, but again, it's just not very strong. A 10-foot push is fine battlefield control, but considering it happens on the enemy's turn, they can just move up. So overall, I don't really recommend taking Talisman in the first place, but if you're going to, it's really just up to you whether you want this or not, whether you think that's going to be useful enough to take up one of your precious invocation slots. And that's going to do it for the level 3 Pact Invocations, the ones that require a specific pact to use. That is all of them that are available at level 3. If you take this Warlock dip, or if you're playing a full Warlock, and you use some of these invocations, and you have some insights that maybe I don't, I want to hear about in the comments. That's what they're for. And otherwise, have a great day and happy gaming. Peace.